Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. Great article here from T-Mobile's newsroom. Comes with a bit of a network update in this article that I wanted to go over with you guys here today. And it's right at the beginning here. So this is a network update, if you will. So we've built nearly 500,000 square miles of new 5G coverage across rural America and doubled our retail presence with 600 stores that provide vital in-person service options. So, as I've said in previous videos, you can't have one without the other. You can't have coverage without retail, and you can't have retail distribution without coverage. I mean, it just makes sense. Now, coverage expansion oftentimes happens faster because the tower has more reach than you can add retail presence. So they likely have to add many more retail locations where today they have coverage. And that's an ongoing process. Now, adding 500,000 square miles of coverage, of new coverage, that's pretty massive, right? To put that in perspective, that's the entire state of Texas 2 times. The state of Texas is around 250,000 square miles. So T-Mobile added 500,000 square miles of new 5G coverage. Now, that could have been existing LTE coverage that they just upgraded to 5G. But remember, in the rural environment, their LTE footprint was not very big and not very strong. So, if any at all, so I'm taking this as new coverage for me. We know how weak T-Mobile's rural coverage footprint was during LTE. It was almost non-existent. In fact, it's been rumored and talked about that Sprint had a bigger rural presence than T-Mobile. And I think that's probably quite factual. And yes, T-Mobile did take some of those Sprint sites and they converted them, the Sprint keeps, and that got them new rural coverage as well. But that was not 500,000 square miles worth. Not even close. I mean, I think Sprint's total network size was barely over 1 million. So there's no way they got 500,000 square miles from just Sprint keep sites. So a lot of this is new coverage. So if they can add, I'll give a time frame of 3 to 5 years. Starting today, the next 3 to 5 years, if they can add in another, I would say, 250,000 square miles, I think they're going to be very, very close on par with what the competition has today. Now, the competition is not sitting still. We can all acknowledge that. Verizon continues to invest. AT&T continues to invest. Verizon might be on a densification spree across that footprint, which could potentially present better performing coverage versus what T-Mobile might put out. Very possible, right? We have to discuss that. But if T-Mobile can get close enough from a competitive perspective, I think that's very dangerous for competition, right? For Verizon and AT&T. I was in a T-Mobile store earlier, and I'll talk about that in another video. They're pushing savings heavily with the postpaid brand, right? Verizon is starting to use all of their MVNO brands that they own, right? TracFone, Straight Talk, Total Wireless now, Visible. They're using them and they're undercutting. They're starting a price war, so to speak. T-Mobile is trying to do that with their postpaid brand. As soon as you walk in a store, you're greeted with a big poster that says savings on AT&T and Verizon plans. And then you can scan a QR code and it'll tell you how much you can save. Also, I've recently seen T-Mobile is pushing the, in national advertising, T-Mobile's pushing the 55 and older plans again. And they're pushing them, why? Because of savings. So they understand the market and where the economy is. So they pivoted, right? They pivoted their marketing in the second quarter. They started pushing a big savings campaign versus Verizon and AT&T. Fast forward to the third quarter now, they're doing the same again. They're trying to attack the pain point in today's economy. They're pushing savings, and that seems to be working in terms of port outs and port ins. right? Comparing the two, they are likely getting more poured ins than poured outs, and using the savings as a big starting point, selling point in the go-to market for the Q2 and Q3. I'm sure Q4 will have a mix of the savings and then heavy promotional activity on iPads, and then with the iPhone launching next month, we already have a date set when the announcement will be. So T-Mobile is going to be very active, but this clearly shows and signals that they are looking to continue to grow the base. They're not pivoting just yet to becoming a net income growth stock, as they called it recently. They are still looking to grow. You can see it in the way that they behave right now. They are pushing savings onto the consumer that's out there, the AT&T and Verizon customer. They're also using Mint Mobile to undercut and trying to gain Verizon customers and possibly AT&T as well. Have yet to see response from T-Mobile on the ongoing price cuts from Verizon on their value brands, but I'm sure T-Mobile is analyzing. If this is starting to lead to big port outs and people leaving, then T-Mobile will likely respond. But as I said in the previous video, T-Mobile is better at executing this. So if Verizon wants to start this type of fight, they better get ready, because T-Mobile knows how to perfectly execute any strategy that they put forth. So when it comes to networking and everything else, right, that's Verizon's arena. So T-Mobile is stepping into that. And it's tough to compete against that. But when it comes to marketing, when it comes to deals, when it comes to execution, now Verizon is stepping into T-Mobile's arena. And T-Mobile is better at it. That team that they have, they are better at that type of execution. Right? I give the network to Verizon all day long. But when it comes to go-to market, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to deals, when it comes to effectively pushing that to the consumer, now Verizon is stepping into T-Mobile's arena, and T-Mobile does that better. So good to see, right? 500,000 new square miles of coverage. As they continue to expand the network, they will get better. That's the whole point. People are still referencing 20-30% coverage gap. That gap will close each and every year. And each and every year that gap closes, it gets tougher for the competition to differentiate themselves. Verizon and AT&T have always differentiated themselves on the bigger network. That's been a big selling point. A better network, a bigger network, however, whatever you want to call it, that's been their selling point. They were never able to really undercut T-Mobile on pricing. T-Mobile has always been the disruptive player. So from that point, right, from that competitive perspective, AT&T and Verizon never really responded to T-Mobile much. Yeah, they brought back unlimited and stuff like that, but they never really just said, okay, we're just going to drop pricing below T-Mobile. They never done that. But as T-Mobile closes that coverage gap, not only will they close the coverage gap, they will close the retail distribution gap. They will little by little start closing that perception gap. And then it becomes tougher for the competition to really differentiate themselves. So now T-Mobile has closed the coverage gap. Now T-Mobile has closed the perception gap. And T-Mobile is still cheaper pushing the savings. So it's going to get tough for the competition. So I look forward to how AT&T and Verizon respond once T-Mobile has fully gotten that coverage on par. Will it ever be toe-to-toe? Likely not. But T-Mobile doesn't have to be one-for-one on coverage with Verizon and AT&T to beat the competition. I would say if they can get within 5 to 10% of the coverage that AT&T and Verizon offer today in terms of size and scale, I think T-Mobile is going to have a very strong, successful business. They already do today, but it's going to get bigger and stronger. And then once they get within the 5 to 10% and they grow their financials stronger, I mean, once we go beyond 2030, I mean, they're going to be able to match Verizon and AT&T fully on coverage, like every single square mile that they cover potentially, right? FirstNet is still is still an interesting point because FirstNet gets government funding. So they're going to be able to place towers where like there's literally no personnel. I mean, no population. And I don't know if today, I still don't know if that makes any financial sense for Verizon and T-Mobile to do so, because they get no return on that investment. AT&T gets a return on that investment from FirstNet with the government. Verizon and T-Mobile don't, so they have no incentive on building in those parts. So there may never ever be a one-for-one coverage comparison anymore, because like I said, AT&T can build coverage in areas that probably will be covered by satellite by Verizon and T-Mobile. And AT&T, if they choose to, would be able to build out a native tower because they are incentivized, because they get return on that investment. Verizon and T-Mobile don't. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It's going to be a nice competitive next few years in the industry, and we'll see who comes out on top. But I think T-Mobile, with closing the coverage gap, they can execute everything else better across the board. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you're new. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.